Welcome to the Career Jitsu Podcast. Our listeners are going to get a lot of insight, and it's going to be very spiritual today because today we have Ben Shaw. Ben Shaw is a very unique individual in the sense that he is both a BJJ black belt and he also has his PhD. So it's going to be a very intellectual conversation. We are so excited about it. But before we begin, the reason I'm drinking this right here, it's called Alive, and it said mood and mind, calm, clear, and uplifted spirit. So I figured this would be a great drink to have today because maybe we'll uplift our spirit of our podcast today. So we'll put the link in our description about Alive. So if you want to try it, you can try it. But so let's get back to it. So Ben, like I said, is a BJJ black belt, and he trains at Renaissance Martial Arts in Lynchburg, Virginia. And he is going to make the connections for us between his study of jujitsu and his study of apologetics. And apologetics, for our listeners, does not mean to apologize. Ben was very clear about that in his pre-interview with me. So welcome to the podcast, Ben.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here. You guys got a lot of cool stuff to talk about. We've already talked a lot before the show started, so I think it'll be a great time.
Yeah, we in our pre-interview, we just couldn't stop talking about so many interesting things. And one other thing that's very cool about Ben is he loves magic, card magic. So we might get a little bit of that if we can fit that into our podcast, and how magic relates to jiu-jitsu is always fun to talk about. But Ben, first of all, thank you so much for coming on. We really appreciate your taking time out of your busy day. And just let's get the ball rolling with, how did you get into jiu-jitsu? Where did that start? You have your black belt now. Tell us about day one.
Yeah, so I wanted to be law enforcement, and I thought it'd be probably a good idea to learn how to wrestle and do that kind of stuff because those guys tend to go hands-on often. So may want to learn how to do that. But I also grew up, I like martial arts. I like, old school WWF wrestling. And so I liked all that area, but I didn't want something that was um because there's a lot of that fake martial arts stuff going on. And I remember, I think I was in middle school or so, but I was taking some sort of martial art and you're learning how to take people down from a handshake. And I'm like, well, if I'm shaking their hand, why am I in a fight with them? Why am I all of a sudden turning the tables on them? That kind of left just a bad feeling with me. But then I eventually found a gym that did weapon disarms, weapon training, kickboxing, and jujitsu. And so I did all of them and thought that I was going to go into law enforcement. I was like, oh, I should familiarize myself with this. And I'm from Fort Lauderdale too, so it's always good to have some self-defense down in that area.
And then so when did you start and how did you progress?
I started around, I guess it'd be around 2005 or so, maybe 2000, between 2004 and 2006, somewhere in there. And I loved doing the weapons. I thought that was really neat. That's kind of part of my other story too. It ties in because you have to know the weapon's empty, or you have to know there's bullets in there. So that was something. There's no, it's my truth that it's empty. That doesn't, it doesn't fly.
There's
It
no
does not fly.
relativism here.
That's
No
right.
moral relativism.
Yeah, and I wrestled with that growing up. But so that helped with that. But then I started doing the jujitsu and I'm like, "Oh, this is awesome." Because I'm 160 pounds. I was 170 pounds at the time. But I was like, "Oh, this is great." And you can wrestle with these big guys and you get a feel of what it's like when they grab you and when you grab them, and to be able to control positions and do so. Damian Maia is one of the guys I like a lot. And, he had this series where he won like 4 or 5 fights in a row, all by submission. And he got interviewed and he's like, in the last 4 fights, I've only had 3 significant strikes thrown. They couldn't even throw punches. And I was like, man, that's a really cool way to see jujitsu as the soft art because you can control and subdue uh, people without hurting them unless they, don't tap or whatever the situation ends up.
Right, right. Thus the gentle art.
Yes.
And so you kind of had to weed your way through the McDojos so you never joined up for that one guy who takes your energy and just throws it at people and knocks them down.
No, 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 that's not the case. So I did play ice hockey, and I remember my first jujitsu tournament. So I was I was full-time hockey. And then I started doing jujitsu, and I did my
So you
first
played hockey in high school or
I
in
played
college?
in high school, and then I played junior hockey in Connecticut for 3
Oh,
years.
wow.
Yeah, and
Okay.
so I lived in New England. We traveled around up there, and then, long story short, I end up back in Fort Lauderdale. It's warmer. If I'm gonna play at a rink that doesn't have a campus, I might as well do so in Florida. And, so I'm playing for FAU, and there was a jiu-jitsu tournament, and I was training for it, and our first match went to overtime, and I thought I was in the best shape of my life, and I was dying at the first match, and I'm like, "I don't think I'm cut out for jiu-jitsu. This is just crazy how tired I am right now." But the adrenaline and the cardio and all that stuff coming together. But I had a good team of guys encouraging me and didn't let me quit. So that was really helpful as well.
It's always about the community. And
Yeah.
Jason, you had a word for that once. I think we were talking once, Jason, about how even like a sprinter or runners come in with the best cardio, but they gas out in, a minute and 30 seconds, they're gassed out. Did you call it something like adaptive cardio? Something like that?
Something like that, but you definitely your body, it's specific adaptation to imposed demands.
That's what
It's
it
called
was.
the
Specific
it's called the
adaptation.
SAID principle. It's spelled SAID, SAID. Basically, what it means is your body adapts to whatever demands you place upon it. So if you're a bodybuilder and you're strong and you do jujitsu, there's a lot of cardio in jujitsu. So if you're a bodybuilder and you try to go 100%, you're going to be crawling in the corner in about 2 minutes.
Yeah.
Right, right. And that's kind of what happened with you in hockey. You're like in great physical shape, and hockey is constant movement. And then you get on the jiu-jitsu match, you're like, it does translate somewhat, but not all of it,
Yeah.
right?
I remember just my grips too on my hands were, you couldn't, they were done. I was so tired.
Yeah, the whole forearm burn and
Yeah.
like, yeah, yeah, it's just stuff that you don't typically use, and you have to adapt and get better at it. So you got your black belt, and congratulations for making it all the way to that. That's not an easy feat. You had your community helping you. We always talk about the value of community. And then now tell us a little bit about your spiritual journey, religious, spiritual. I don't know how you would call it, and then give us a little indoctrination into the land of apologetics.
Yeah.
And it sounds really, I mean, I have an idea because I always know in philosophy,
Yeah.
when you apologize, you are supporting something,
Yeah.
defending and supporting, right? So tell us about your journey there.
Yeah, I'll tell a little bit about my background, and there's a better way, there's a good way for us to talk about apologetics, that everyone listening will get immediately as well. So, but part of my background is, my babysitter when I was growing up, she took me to church when I was a kid. Because if I spent the night at her house on Saturday, she was going to church on Sunday, and so was I. And so I heard the Sermon on the Mount while I was there, and I just remember when I heard Jesus talking, he was talking as one with authority, and especially when he got to the point on love your enemies and pray for them. And that was really profound for me because in the Sermon on the Mount, it talks about, don't even sinners love those who are nice to them. So who cares if you're nice to other people? But if you're nice to those who don't treat you kindly, that's a different level of being loving and gracious. And we see that throughout the Old and New Testament. And so that really got me thinking, but I didn't get discipled. So God had oases for me along the way, but I did not have someone showing me how to read the Bible. If I went to church, it'd be with her. I ended up going to a Lutheran middle school, a public high school, then a Catholic high school. So kind of the opposite order historically, still.
Hmm.
But I went to Catholic high school because they had a hockey team. So it's not like they had a hockey team. So that's why I went there. That's the same reason why I went to Liberty. They had a ice rink. So I was playing at FAU and someone told me about Liberty and they're like, you can learn about God at Liberty. I was like, well, I can do that here. I don't need to go to Virginia to do that. So a couple weeks go by, then they told me that ice rink on campus, and it was amazing. It's even better now. It's better than a lot of pro rinks, just to be honest with you. It's ridiculous. But I saw that and I went there. And when I got there, like I didn't know Paul wrote half the New Testament. So, there's a lot I didn't know. So growing up without that discipleship component, I was tossed and turned by every wind of doctrine. I mentioned the moral relativism. and that postmodernism that I had imbibed pretty well. It's a terrible way to live. I have events where I remember someone doing something immoral to me, and I wanted to tell them, but I didn't want to impose my morality on them. And I'm like, this is so dumb. But I didn't know the way out of it, you know? And so I wrestled with those things, and I'm in Broward County, so 4 million people, 4 million opinions. Yeah, I don't know. How do I know who's right and who's wrong? And so you can either go really cynical and say everyone's wrong and you can't know anything, or you can go a more positive way. I'll give it a more charitable interpretation, but everyone's right, and so I kind of went that way, I'll give everyone the benefit of the doubt kind of thing, but I really don't know. And so that's kind of how I got to Liberty. And then when I got to Liberty, I met this guy named Gary Habermas, and he was one of the first coaches of the hockey team. And so I met him and I'm like, that's great. But I've been training, dude. So our team's gonna be really good now. I'm sure they were good when you were coaching, but now we're gonna be. And so we're doing we did go to the Final Four, by the way. But anyway, just got to throw that in there. While I was there, we had long road trips, and one of the guys on our team, we had a lot of Canadians on our team. He was like, "Hey, listen to this podcast, and on 8-hour trips, you got time." So you're like, "Okay, I'll listen to them." And they were sharing with me guys who would go to college campuses and answer questions that people had about Christianity. And I was like, I didn't even know this stuff existed. Like, people are giving serious questions. People are giving serious answers to these questions. And you can tell they've been really thoughtful about it. And they've investigated these things. They treated them seriously. And I was a marketing major because, remember, I wanted to be law enforcement. So I was a business degree. And my senior year, I took a class called Christian Evidences. And one of the books we had to read was The Case for the Resurrection. And in this book, I find the author, and his name's Gary Habermas. And I'm like, dude, this is the coach of the hockey team. Why is he writing a resurrection book? And then I came to find out he's the world's leading expert on Jesus's resurrection. He's debated at like Oxford, debated Antony Flew, if you're familiar with philosophy. He was the well-known atheist from a generation ago. And he's just half Canadian. He's from Detroit. So he's a hockey guy too. And so after that, I was like, man, well, if I'm going to be law enforcement in Florida, I can't help anybody. People have really serious problems, and I know I can't help them, but I know God can. So I need to find out more about God so I can share that with them. And so I started doing that. I got a Master Arts of Religious Studies, where I was studying different religious worldviews and comparing them to Christianity, just trying to understand them, what they taught, how does that differ? And then I started to look at the evidential components. And then after that, I got an opportunity to study with Dr. Habermas and get a PhD. So I did that, and I was able to study with him for like a decade overall. And I did my master's thesis on the resurrection, and I ended up doing my PhD dissertation on the resurrection because it is the centerpiece of Christianity. I mean, if the resurrection didn't happen, there's no Christianity. And so that's the foundation in many ways of our faith. And so I remember studying it. Even when I was an undergrad, I thought I had some alternative theories that would work. And I emailed Dr. Habermas and I shot him to him, and he goes, no, because of this, this, and this. And I was like, all right, I'm going to get you next time. And then I was on campus. I'm like, man, this resurrection really happened. And I'm starting to think about these other worldviews. I'm like, they don't have anything to offer. They don't have positive evidence. They don't have a positive case. Atheism was particularly coming to my mind at that moment. And I was like, so this is going to change. This changes everything from how I'm living now and how I'm moving forward, because it's a past event that has present significance and gives a future hope. And so I had that as an undergrad. So I just kept studying it and researching it since then. And it really helped me. And then doing good philosophy, right? That also helped with the waffling and the wavering and those sorts of things. Because wrestling with, if truth is relative, it's hard to, not waffle, because everything can be anything all at once, and it doesn't make any sense. So
Everything can be anything. Can you say that
yeah,
again, Ben? Say that again.
everything can be anything all at once, right? If it feels good today, okay, well, it's true today. But if I don't like it tomorrow, then it's total garbage the whole time. And it's just perfectly true then as well. So
Okay.
yeah,
Is that relative moralism? Is that what you're talking about?
it was a little bit of that and truth. So I held it for both. So I held to an objective morality because of the Sermon on the Mount, but I didn't want to impose that on others. And I didn't understand how other people were holding their other views of morality.
Right. So wow, I have so many questions
Mhm.
I actually want to ask you. I guess my biggest question, and I asked one of the members of our gym is very serious about his religion. He gave some very cool answers. They were very intellectual and academic, kind of hard for me to wrap my brain around. But let me ask you this question, and you've probably heard it before because you have your black belt in this. I guess my biggest question about Christianity is the three things: all good, all powerful, and all knowing, right? Those three things: all good, all powerful, and all knowing. So, from my own logical point of view, I could give two of those, but three is hard because if you're all good, you want the best for everybody. If you're all powerful, you can definitely make it happen. And if you're all knowing, you would know before you gave free will exactly how that experiment was going to unfurl. So I feel like nobody can really explain that conundrum in a way that makes sense, at least to me. Like they use great logic and great, esoteric ways to kind of like weave through it that kind of makes sense. But in the end, all good, all powerful, and all knowing. So this is just what I've heard before. Let me just preface what I've heard before, and then I just want to hear your thoughts on it. So my question, like I would say, okay, so they would say, people would typically propose this. God didn't want a bunch of mindless lemmings, so he gave them free will. And then he gave them everything and said, your free will, just be good and take care of what I gave you. But Adam bit the apple, buffoon that he is, and now all the way down, thousands and thousands and thousands of years, everybody, cancer, you know, murder, cancer, rape, all the horrible things that happen to people because Adam bit the apple. So the big question that comes to me is, I'm not as smart as God, but I know if I gave my children, right, children, a room full of toys, beautiful toys, like really good ones that all kids like, and one crappy toy that was in the corner. And I said, listen, I want you to have free will, kids. I just play with all of them, but not that one. I know, because I'm not even all knowing, and I know how that's going to end. Know that they're going to play with that toy. And to punish them, but to punish their posterity forever and ever for a very long time, seems like you weren't all knowing and you were either hoping, or you all were all knowing and you knew that was going to happen. And then if you're all powerful, you could fix it so many people didn't have to suffer. Does that logic make sense to you?
Yeah, well, you mentioned philosophy earlier. This is Epicurus. Here's thousands of years ago, raising the same point. And you're asking the problem of evil. How can an all good, all powerful God allow evil in the world? And the objection typically goes, if he's all good, he wouldn't allow the evil. And if he's all powerful, he wouldn't allow it because he could stop it. So either he's not all good or he's not all powerful. And you summarized it very well. Now, a couple ways to approach it. Much like jujitsu, there's more than one way to get a guillotine. So more than one way to enter this discussion. So I noticed you said the word religion a couple times, and you're being very respectful if I like that term. We could use the term worldview, because everybody has a worldview. And when we say religion, it kind of gets treated as something different than a worldview, but it's just a worldview. So atheist, secular, Christian, Buddhist, everyone's got a worldview. And it addresses those questions: origin, meaning of life, morality, what happens when we die, those sorts of things. So this question of the evil we see in the world, it's a question for everybody. It's not like it's just relevant for the Christian or the theist, because the question's more for general theism as well. Because a deist could go, well, God just did that and he took off and he's out of here. And that's that's that answer they might
That
get.
is an easy one to believe, is it not?
Well,
He made the clock, he wound the clock, he tossed it out and said, good luck. That makes sense. See, the deist philosophy actually makes sense. He's a good guy. He said, listen, let me put these ingredients together. I'm going to send it out, and good luck, guys. I hope for the best. And he's off to his next experiment. That's not hard to back up.
I would think that is problematic, though, because why would he create it with the problems? He created because the problem is the evil in the world. So why would he make this machine that's already problematic from the gate? So I think the issue still remains, even for the deist in that category.
Let me just answer that question. I think maybe this isn't part of their philosophy. I don't know deism
there's
that
no
great.
There's no like deist handbook,
This,
right?
okay, so I
So
can make up my own. So I'm going to
you
make up
got
my own here and say, listen, he's a good force, but he's not all powerful. So he's like, all right, I'm going to put together the best thing. Like if I made an ant farm, I'd do the best I could for it and I put it out. I'd be like, I hope you guys live. I'm not perfect, right? So it's a good God, but not an all powerful God that did the best he could. He said, here you go. I'm going to give you some life. Go get him, champ. And now he's off to do another experiment somewhere else.
So you would think that's better than a God who does the same thing, but instead of taking off, gets involved in the world.
No. In fact, no, it would be better for him to get involved. But if he got involved and he was all good and all powerful, I think he'd be doing a better job than the world we have right now.
Okay. But at least before we get to that second point, it would be better. You create that ant farm, you walk away, you start to see it falling over. Like, oh, I got to go.
Yeah. It would be a better, yes, I'll give you that.
So back to the whole thing, though, is the point we're making here is everyone has to account for evil. And so it is important to have that consideration. What's also interesting, for what this may be worth, I used to teach a class and I would have the students poll 2 non-Christians, 2 Christians, and their pastor. What are the biggest objections to Christianity? Problem of evil is always one of them. The reliability of the New Testament and or the resurrection is one of them. Christian hypocrisy was typically number 3. And is Christianity the exclusive way would kind of battle with that for number 4. So those are some common questions. Problem of evil, again, it's for everyone. Now, it's interesting. I think it is worth noting because the problem of evil, like you've described, it doesn't follow from the problem of evil, therefore God does not exist. So it's not an argument for atheism. It's just an argument for how we understand God at best. And on the greatest case, because even you said either God is not as all good or powerful or things like that. Now, that's a lot of entryway to the position, I suppose, to put it that way. Now, for the Christian worldview, there are some different views on it. The free will defense, which you've alluded to, I think is a good one, because when you mentioned your kids in the room and say, don't touch this thing, and you care for them, if you knew what they're going to do, you wouldn't do it. But you care for them precisely because they have free will to love you back as their father. So you haven't even eliminated that free will component from there. And we didn't talk about this. I'm assuming you do have kids?
I do.
And did you know that you're going to have to discipline them at some point in your life, even though you had them?
Yes, and let me just clarify. I don't think Adam should not have had his if that happened, I don't think he shouldn't have had his hand slapped. But like I would not punish Nikki and Jake's children and their children and
Yeah.
their children. That's like I mean,
Yeah, I
you
get,
know,
I get, yeah. So that's the
yeah.
okay, yeah. We're working our way down the chain
Okay.
here, the chain of moves.
Yeah.
So
You know.
that's what that's what
No,
we're
I
doing.
love the
Spiritual
jujitsu. I love
jujitsu.
yeah, spiritual. That is so spiritual jujitsu is fun. You
But I
guys
don't want
out
to.
there should try this.
I don't want to give you guys the inner chi coming out and pushing. I don't want to. We don't want to do
No,
that.
you don't want to
Right?
be McDojo.
No, I don't want to
Yeah.
be McDo. No, that's right. So for us, when you look at what happened, and you've already alluded to it, people are evil. Because you said, look at the world today. Look at the murders. Look at the crimes. That's everybody. So Nick and Jane, they're just as culpable. This is one of it's often said that one of the most empirically verifiable claims of Christianity is the doctrine of sin. Because you can the problem of evil wouldn't be a problem if people didn't sin. That's one of the initial takeaways. Because now the problem is we have, and this is good for jujitsu too, how many blue belts do we know that think they're black belts, right?
There definitely some.
Yeah. We do the same thing with our own morality. We think we are much better than we actually are. And you might go, oh, there's plenty of secular psychological literature on this. There's a book I've got, oh my goodness, Moral Grandstanding. And they go through this where people want to elevate their own morality. Sometimes it's done by putting other people down. There's a famous story by it's a pastor. So there's a biker gang. One of the bikers gets killed in a robbery. And his brother goes to a pastor and is like, hey, I need you to do the eulogy for my brother. And the pastor's like, I'm not doing a eulogy for your brother. Everyone knows he was a murderer. He died during a shootout. I'm not doing it for him. And then the biker's like, I'll give you $1 million. The pastor's like, man, we could use a new sanctuary. This is pretty, okay, I'm thinking about it. So the biker comes back and he goes, so you're going to do this? I'll give you the $1 million right now. And the pastor's like, yeah, I'll do it. And the biker goes, okay, just got one last thing, one last deal. You have to call my brother a saint during the eulogy. And he's like, I got it. He's like, are you sure? You didn't even think about it. He goes, no, I got it. Trust me. We're good. And so the day the eulogy comes, the pastor gets up. He goes, all right, everyone, you all know this man. He was a murdering, thieving snake of a person. He was a drug dealer, horrible person. But compared to his brother, he was a saint. And we do this. We do this. And so this is one of the things that, like, with the founding of even our country, they recognized human sinfulness and selfishness. And so it's in Christianity that we really see this highlighted like no other worldview. There's a guy from India named Vishal Mangalwadi, and he started looking at Christianity because in it says it will be a blessing to the world. Abraham will be a blessing. So he goes, I want to see if Christianity has been a blessing to our nation. And he starts going through the Bible, and he's like, my goodness, this book, it doesn't like Jewish people. And he's reading the Old Testament. He goes, the kings are sinners, the priests are sinners, and the people are sinners. It lays all their faults out in the Old Testament and in the New Testament. I mean, Peter denies Jesus 3 times. He's called Satan at one point. So their falls are all laid bare. And so it's the only worldview that I'm aware where those are so explicit, because no one's perfect except for one. And so then as we start looking at Jesus, now we're seeing that command, because I can love sinners as long as they're nice to me. But then when you start loving people who aren't nice to you, oh, that's something different. But that's exactly what Jesus did, because Romans 5:8 says, while we were sinners, Christ died for us. So it's not like Ben was on the way up. He was doing good. He won a couple tournaments. Let's give him that belt rank. I was getting tapped out left and right, and Christ came and did that. So we're seeing God get involved. He's not wishing that any should perish. He doesn't want us all to stay there. But you did bring up this question of hell too. It seemed to be like the punishment. Does the punishment fit the crime? It's kind of what I was taking away from some of your question. Now there's a book called 4 or 5 Views on Hell, where you get 4 or 5 views on hell from different theologians.
Does this have anything to do with Dante's Inferno?
They
Aren't there
allude,
like 15 levels in Dante's Inferno?
yeah, there's differences there, but we kind of, if I had to give a baseline, what's the takeaway from all of them? Because C.S. Lewis famously said, hell's locked from the inside. We put ourselves there. Because if God is what you said, he's everything holy, he's everything good. And if we separate ourselves from that, then we have separated ourselves from everything holy, righteous, good, and loving. And then we're in the absence of that, which is horror, malice, hatred, all things that are terrible. So those can be elements of hell. There's discussions on hell's, is it a literal place? Is it judgment? The shorthand, regardless which view of those you take, it's not good, right? It's not a place you want to be. And some people even take like an nihilist perspective. Even that's not good, right? Those are not good. And this is why I like the resurrection. In Acts 17:30 and 31, Paul, who used to persecute the church, is now preaching. He's in Athens, the center of philosophy. He's preaching to everyone. There's an unknown God there, and he's reaching them about it. And he closes by saying, so this is the whole bottom line. Therefore, verse 30 starts, therefore, God's calling all people everywhere to repent, because he has fixed a day in which he will judge the world, and he's proved this by raising that man from the dead. So this resurrection connects this judgment that will occur. But we also recognize this even in our moral accountability. When we experience wrongdoing, we cry out for justice. And we see in the Old and New Testament, those who follow God are supposed to be those who seek justice and do it properly, do it objectively, do it fairly. It doesn't matter where you're from. It matters if you broke the law or not. I used to ref ice hockey for 15 years, and I've ref my friends, and when they did something wrong, I was like, penalty. This is how we're supposed to do it. So anyway, that was me talking for way too long. I know there's something in there I'm sure you got a question on, but we could talk about near-death experiences where they talk about some of these things, both hellish and evidential cases. Or we could talk about
So
jiu-jitsu.
I definitely want to get into jiu-jitsu too, but I have one more question that you brought up about the exclusivity of Christianity. I know some people in my life who are very, I guess they're born again, and they believe that everybody else is going to go to one of those versions of hell that you mentioned, except the Christians. And I would always say to them, well, what about a Muslim kid who's brought up by Muslim parents and doing a great job being a good member of the community. That's what he believes. That's what his parents told him. That's what his church tells him. Or a Jewish person, same thing. They go to Mecca because they have
Well,
learned
I
that
don't know
they're
if a Jewish
kind.
person is going to Mecca, but yeah,
What's that?
I don't know if a Jewish person is going to
Oh
Mecca.
no, no, but they go to their temple, right? They
For
go to their
example, yeah.
temple to worship. So a Jewish person goes to their temple to worship, and they follow all the rules and all the laws, and they're a good person. Then one day they're struck by lightning, and they have to go to hell too because they didn't pick the right religion. Is that part of Christianity, or is that part of a more extreme view of Christianity?
Yeah, I think that description would be a McDojo description, if I could put it that way.
Okay.
Because, and for a few reasons, and that's not to, I'm not trying to downplay it. I'm trying to think like from a Christian hearing that perspective, because even philosophically, so a Satanist who's doing a good member of community, they would it'd be unfair for them too. How about the ancient Aztecs when they would sacrifice children? You know, they're being good members of society. Is that fair for them too? So we're already presupposing a definition of good and a
Hmm.
standard of good. So then we got to backtrack. Where does that definition come from? And then this goes back to the moral grandstanding. Am I the definition? And this is where anything can be everything any time of the week, right? But if there is, this is one of the things that was really helpful for me because I used to wrestle with that. Same question. So that's why I didn't like. I was having the McDojo thought as far as it goes too, because I thought, well, if they're good and they're doing, but there's completely different teachings, and we wouldn't say the same thing. Like, imagine if we said the same thing about the law of gravity. Like, oh, they just didn't teach the law of gravity. They didn't believe it the same way, but they can't walk off buildings, they die, right? So you have truth is still truth, regardless of if my culture breeds it or it doesn't. Because we can have decayed and decaying cultures. Like I'd imagine there's some places you'd prefer to live other than others, right? So there are certain cultures that are closer and further away from those objective truths and moral goods. No, not saying anyone's perfect or anything like that. So that's kind of like one element I would highlight about that. And then the second is that it seems to assume that Christianity is just head knowledge. And you know, there's good jujitsu analogies here too. But before I get to that, James 2:19 says, "Even the demons believe and shudder." So they know who Jesus is, but they're not faithful to him. And so in Christianity, it can be helpful to talk in terms of allegiance. There's a book called Salvation by Allegiance Alone. And in order to give someone your allegiance, you have to know them, you have to have the head knowledge, but you also have the heart and the will have to go with it. You can't just have, like for my wife, I can't just have head knowledge about who she is and then never act in faithful accordance with that head knowledge, right? That wouldn't be good. And so we want to have head and heart, and then ultimately that leads to the hands doing something. In jiu-jitsu, it's like me just watching a bunch of YouTube videos and I've never actually like applied them. I have the head knowledge about them, but I don't have or as you get older and you know how to do the moves, but your body's starting to break down and your cardio's starting to go, I want to do the moves, my body won't go. So I think that's a key difference there. It's not just it's not a mechanistic thing where I can just check these boxes and now we're good. Or I've got some secret knowledge that I'm actually supposed to go and bring that knowledge to people. We're supposed to be lights to the world. And this Sermon on the Mount, Matthew 5, 16 to 19, is we're supposed to do our good works in such a way, and good works are things that are pleasing to the Lord, in such a way that people glorify him as a result, not me, but him. So they don't see me when these things happen, but they see him. And so when we look at these stories and see accounts of that, there are people who have done those things. And then you're seeing foretastes of heaven, foretastes of what this life with God will be. But I would say it
I'll
comes to
just
the resurrection. Remember, I said that was from the beginning. And Paul says this in 1 Corinthians 15, 14 to 19, multiple times. If Jesus isn't raised, your faith is in vain. Our preaching is worthless. We're still in our sins. So in short, they're false prophets. So their souls, like they're lying about God. That's not something they want to do. Of all men, we should be pitied more than anyone else because we live lives of sacrifice, of giving. Jesus says the greatest among you will be your servant. So if you live a life like that and he didn't rise, he also says, eat, drink, and tomorrow. If Jesus didn't rise, eat, drink, for tomorrow we die. So he was doing YOLO way back in the day.
YOLO way back in the day. Wow, that's definitely some heavy stuff, and I appreciate your perspective on it. It will always be a very difficult thing for me to think a Buddhist, a peaceful Buddhist has no chance of having a good afterlife. Like that will never resonate in my bones.
Can I ask it this way? Why do you think Christians, what do you think it is about salvation for them that allows that? Because Buddhists don't think Christians are going to experience the Buddhist afterlife. And that doesn't seem to,
I don't think that's true. I think Buddhists are like be kind, be one with nature. Everything that Buddhists teach is about peacefulness and kindness. Every book I've read, I mean, I'm not listen, this is out of my wheelhouse. You know, I haven't studied, but everything I've read about Buddhism has been very peaceful, very kind, very be kind to the world, kind to others, kind to nature, see other people and yourself. A lot of them are very similar to Christian values. I just feel like a Buddhist wouldn't say to, I could be totally wrong on this. I could be speaking way out of my realm. I feel like a Buddhist wouldn't say to a Christian, "You're all wrong. You're not gonna make." Listen, when we die, we go back into whatever energy, back into the trees, back into. Buddhists think your energy continues in the universe. It's more, I don't know. It's a more of a organic kind of thing. I don't think they would say to a Christian, "But not you, because you didn't pick my religion." I think, but Christians sometimes I think say to the Buddhists more like, "Oh, you're such a nice, peaceful person. Yeah, you plant trees, you love, you don't hate, you help, but you just picked the wrong path, and so you're doomed." That's how I know it might be Frankie McDojo here, but that's how it resonates to me.
yeah. So you're reminding me, one of the other points I wanted to highlight when you were describing the problem of evil is not all issues are factual. And I've kind of alluded to that even in the last statement there about the demons believing. There's factual, and this is true for not just religious discussions or worldview discussions, but at life. But there's factual questions, there's emotional questions, and there's volitional questions. And so from the Christian perspective, because Christianity and Buddhism are mutually exclusive, they both can't be true, right? They teach compatibly or contradictory teachings, right? So they both can't be true. 2 plus 2 can't be 5 just because I'm really nice, right? Fair?
I don't know if I agree with that. I think a Buddhist would say, "Be a Christian. You're good." I don't think a Buddhist, and I'm not a Buddhist, and I don't know enough to speak on their behalf. So let me just,
So yeah. So maybe this is the
but
wrong trail to go down if that's the, yeah.
yeah, I just don't feel
Mm.
like a Buddhist would say that if you're a Christian. I think a Buddhist would say you could be a Christian and a Buddhist. I do think a Buddhist would say that.
Yeah, so I'm not so sure. But that may be part of the reason why I take a different view. Now, the first question I was asking, this is good by the way. I enjoy this. Hope you're enjoying it too.
Yeah, I love this. I love this conversation.
Was what do you think the Christian's view on that is? Are we sitting here going, "Oh, you guys all," am I sitting here clutching my black belt going, "Oh, you guys, you suck white belts. You guys are terrible." And I'm doing that? Or am I saying, "Man, remember I quoted that Romans 5:8, for by grace you have been saved. Because while we were still sinners, Christ died for us. For by grace you've been saved," that's Ephesians 2. So we want to go share that same grace and forgiveness that was given to us with other people. So it's kind of like, dude, I just learned this good move. The secret move we talked about before the show started. I got this secret move. I got to tell you about it because it's really good and you need to know about it. And you're like, "I don't want to learn this move. I'm glad it works for you, but I'm not going to do it." And then you see him getting armbarred because he didn't do it. He didn't do this black belt move. So there's elements there. And then I would also, I mean, I've read some conversion stories from Buddhists as well. I mean, the first question we talked about was the problem of evil, and you seem to have exempted Buddhists from that evil, sinful inclination.
I think everybody, no. I think everybody struggles with sin. I don't think there's any religion. We all have it in our DNA. I definitely do.
So yeah, I would say, and I say this because I used to think a lot of those things very similarly. And one of the things that helped clarify this was on the exclusivity thing is everybody is an exclusivist because everybody's an exclusivist because even those who want to include everybody, they exclude the exclusivists. They say you can't come here because you're not including everyone in your view. And that's what we're about. So they even have to exclude. So on that philosophical level, there's this mutual contradictory notions that both can't be held at the same time and in the same sense. And so I think those are some key differences. Now, God does reach out. Acts 17 says that God knows our boundaries. He knows these things, where we're going to be born and all those sorts of things. And many people report dreams of Jesus. Anyway, that's probably getting off on a tangent, but that may be a good place to leave it then.
I mean, I could talk for hours. I literally could talk for hours about this. It's just fascinating to me. Tell us a little bit about how your faith has translated. And then, Jason, I'm sorry, I'm hogging this because this is just, I have so many questions that I want to ask, and we only have a certain amount of time. So I'm going to ask one more question, Jason, then I'm going to give you the floor because I've definitely hogged too much of this podcast. My last question, this is going to be my last one. How has your faith helped you on the mats, and how has what you've learned on the mats helped you build your nonprofit organization?
Yeah, those are good questions. Colossians 3:23 says we're supposed to do all things to the best that we can. So we want to do that to the Lord. So if that's on the mat, if that's playing hockey, whatever it is, if it's changing our kids' diapers, right? Big, small, doesn't matter. And so we just want to pursue excellence. But also, as I was wanting to be law enforcement and also just a peacemaker, being able to do jujitsu well gives you those tools to be able to be a peacemaker in any situation. You guys are probably familiar with there's a difference between harmless and peaceful. Harmless means I can't hurt you if I want to. Peaceful means I choose not to. And so I want to be a peacemaker who is peaceful. So having the capacity, which is dwindling as I get older, but having the capacity is good because you can be a peacemaker. Actually, Jason asked me before, this was a couple weeks ago, we were just talking about what to talk about for the show, and he asked me if I've ever had to use it, and fortunately I haven't, but I almost did since we talked because there was an incident at our Walmart, and fortunately I didn't have to, but it was one of the closest times I've ever had to. And there was a family
What happened?
there was a family that was arguing, and it was a son and a mom. It was a really sad situation. And I saw the son get out of the car to chase his mom, and I told my son to stay where he was, and then I ran over there, and there was another guy over there, and we kind of separated them. I didn't see him hit her or push her or anything, but we separated them. But he had a brother who was with him who was very fired up too, but he settled down, and someone had called the police before that, so the police showed up like 30 seconds after that moment. But then you're thinking like, okay, how do you do jujitsu on a 15-year-old who's just fired up, and maybe not without reason, right? I'm not saying he was justified or not, but I can understand it. And but what am I gonna do? Like a real hard takedown and maybe bang his head on the concrete? That's probably not the best move I want to do. And so you got to think about those things too, because if something did happen, oh, you got a black belt, oh, so you know what you're doing. So why'd you hurt him so much, or why did you not do more? Like then it's no matter your heads I
There's a
win.
liability there. A lot of liability.
Yeah, this is why I'm stressing on here. My cardio is not good because I think about that and my size. I'm still only 160, but wrist locks are good. I still like those. Those are good options. Anyway, that's a different. But you got to think about all those things. But then also too, like I do want to be a peacemaker. But Proverbs talks about be careful about getting involved in other people's fights. I'm not trying to get involved and solve everything because there's whole backstories there that I don't know anything about, and I'm not going to pretend to.
Right.
So
Solid
anyway,
wisdom.
Yeah, in our pre-interview you said don't just quarrel with people, right?
you're right. Yeah.
I think we
Yeah.
mentioned something about that. Yeah. So to our listeners, this is a very intellectual conversation we're having, and I really love that we're strengthening the arguments between jujitsu and theology. So whether you're talking about, Frank's talking about Buddhism and a little bit mentioned about Islam and Christianity, whatever it be, there is a connection with theological philosophy and jujitsu, which is really what I love about this episode. So for our listeners, Ben, can you talk a little bit about the connection between some of the scripture in like Bible scripture and how it could relate to people's training in jujitsu? You mentioned before about Paul, I believe, approaching about how his approach to learning. And you talked about that, and I think you talked about Romans 13. You mentioned something about Romans 13. So can you talk a little bit of some of the Bible scripture and its relation to jujitsu?
Yeah, I think so Romans 13 is good. I don't know about you guys, but I get pretty frustrated. I wish more law enforcement agencies did jujitsu much more often. It's a great de-escalation tool. You're getting constantly reminded how to put hands on, and you're more confident and competent in what to do. So you don't need to go from a 2 to a 10 when a 4 will do, if that makes sense. But because Romans 13 says, in short, the government doesn't carry a sword for no reason. Right. So there's times when they have to use that sword because there's some evil going on in the world, to allude to Frank's point. So that's part of their job. So they can be administrators of justice, and that's how we can use jujitsu in those elements. And that's why we don't want to quarrel with people. We're not doing this to learn to hurt others. But I believe it was C.S. Lewis who said, good philosophy must exist for no other reason than bad philosophy does exist. So you have to have good philosophy to combat the bad philosophy. You've got to have good guys who exist as peaceful and capable, if for no other reason because there's bad guys who exist who are not peaceful but capable. Because there's a lot of people who have the desire but lack the capability. And scripture talks about that too. It's the desires in your heart, the things you set your mind upon. There's many people who have murdered millions of times in their minds, and that's not a good thing on a number of levels. But then there's people who actually seek to commit those crimes. And we see that too, where guys can use these skills in a peaceful way. But it's also good because sometimes, it's neat. Jiu-jitsu, like you said, it is more analytical than some of the other sports. I say it's like physical chess. We're getting to do these things. We're working out and we're thinking at the same time. And we try to, the higher up you go, you can do more complex math problems, But when you're just starting, you're trying to figure out 2 plus 2. And so when you get up there, you're trying to do these heavy math problems. So I think we do have heavy thinkers in the sport, but these are also life questions. And so is combat to a degree, because you're worried about self-defense. And then you're worried about, if I die, what happens if I die? And so this is like, in Hebrews, it says 10:27. It's appointed for man once to die and after that face judgment. So we understand, one, we want to be able to protect people, but two, we understand why we have to protect people, because death is a lingering, or the problem of evil is lingering in the discussion as well. And I think all those kind of combine, because we all want to be good people, but we probably had training partners who weren't so good at people. And so that may push us to train harder because we're like, man, I would hate to see this guy if he'd been out drinking all night or whatever the case is. And so I think it kind of bridges those two elements. And then too, there's just something about competing. For what this may be worth, Jacob wrestled with God as well in the Old Testament. So you got these kind of neat parts in scripture too.
Yeah, I think what's great about the jujitsu mats is, it really, there's a lot, most people that are on the jujitsu mats learning jujitsu techniques, like violent moves, like chokes and arm bars and breaking people's ankles, right? You're a BJJ black belt, so you can literally kill the average person if you wanted to. So, but what I think it's great about the jujitsu culture is that it breeds a culture of good people that are just trying to learn peace through strength. They're just trying to learn how to do these techniques, and they become powerful, but they're not using it in the wrong way. So that's a really interesting, like, I love how that connects really to theological philosophy too.
Yeah, I think a lot of guys, they can go into that. Unfortunately, for some guys, as they start going up, the ego can start to inflate a little bit, and then some negative things can happen. I've seen some really good guys kick some coaches out of their gym who were good practitioners, but the coach said they wouldn't want their children being around that person. And I
Yeah.
thought that was
Yeah.
a profound thing to do.
Yeah. You can
'Cause the
learn all
guy
the
was
skills in
really
the world, but you got to be a good person first.
Yes, yeah, and so that would tie back to, how do we define good and who gets to define it, and all those intellectual questions, right? Because we like those too.
Right.
Yes.
Because I don't wanna just do tribalism and say, "My tribe good, your tribe bad." That doesn't do
Yeah.
anything,
Right.
because they're people just like I am. And I think there's something about working really hard. You build a bond in jujitsu that's different from some other sports. It might be a combat or contact sport thing, but we just had an event in Minneapolis, Minnesota, where we talked about Jesus for 2 days, but we did 2 jujitsu seminars. And so one of the guys who invited us out there, he invited me out there to do the Jesus events, but then we did jujitsu together, and we really bonded after we rolled. And I was like, man, you're a lot tougher than I thought. And he was super tough. It took 4 different tricks on a triangle choke to finish him. And I was like, man, I was not expecting that. but then you build a bond. And there's a group called Men's Alliance, and this is what they focus on. We're going to get you dog tired, and then we can have real talks because you're not going to be fake or phony. You're too tired for it. You're just going to be genuine.
All the
And
facades come down.
yeah, that's right.
Yes.
Ben, I got to get this question in there because this is going to be a viral question and a viral answer. If Jesus trained BJJ, what kind of a grappler would Jesus be?
This is a good question.
That's Jason, that is one of the best questions in the history of this podcast.
I'm going to have to go back to my school and complain they did not prepare me for this question.
You have stumped the doctor? Could it be?
So I don't know, man. He's gonna be a stand-up guy. So maybe that's the way to put it. He's not gonna be a guard puller, but he'll be a stand-up. He'll be a stand-up guy. That's the best I got in the moment.
Stand up.
Yeah, he may be a Marcelo style guy because he's got your back too. So that's probably another element.
I don't think I'd want to grapple Jesus. I don't think that would be I don't think it would turn out too well no matter what happens. You win or lose and you're still losing.
Yeah.
Or winning. Actually, or you're winning. Just the way you look at it, perspective, right?
But yeah, I think that's an interesting question. So we'll see. You know, there's a good podcast out there by John Burke. He's a pastor who investigates near-death experiences. He's got a great book called Imagine Heaven, but he does these interviews, and he mentions in one of them, these people have a near-death experience, and they're playing baseball in heaven. That's their part of their experience. And I'm like, oh, so does that mean there's going to be jiu-jitsu too?
I would say yes.
Yeah. So
Definitely. I think, I don't know. I'm going to answer this not from, your
just gut.
perspective,
You're just
but
going gut
from
instinct.
gut.
Yeah.
I think he would be a different grappler for each different person that he grappled with. He would know what each person kind of needed. He'd push them where he could push them, and I think he'd help them learn that way. That's my
I agree.
answer.
Yeah.
That's
And
my
he'd
answer.
help
But
people learn different ways too. He would sometimes do the Vlad way, Frank.
yes,
We have a
sometimes Vlad is an animal. Vlad is an animal. And it's just hard. It just hurts every time you wrestle with him. He's just pointy bones everywhere and frickin' strong.
That's
Black
how I
belt.
am. I use my bones to my advantage.
Your pointy bones are very helpful. So
Yeah,
so Ben,
the bones definitely give you an advantage there. You know, Paul says, I want to become all things to all people so that I may save some. So he seeks to meet people where they're at, which is what Jesus did. And that's significant. And one of the things that's interesting in our discussion, probably a good one to start as we're closing out, he didn't come to make bad people good. He came to make dead people live. So this kicks back to your drink
Wow.
idea, alive. He came to make people alive. And his resurrection is why the early church despised death and why they were willing to sacrifice and do all those things. And if you want to see a snapshot of what those things look like, if you can look at 2 Corinthians 11, Paul gives a list of 20 different things he suffered for Christianity in the process of serving others. And he was someone who initially was doing that to other people, but something happened that made him change. And that something is Jesus. So I think it's a very powerful thing. And when you're training, man, it helps you die to yourself too, especially whether you get tapped or whether you have to work hard and push past your point of, do you think you can give it all? You got to persevere. And Paul uses analogies in Timothy of an athlete. You train to win a prize. We are to train hard. We're to work hard as believers. It's very, very similar. I use the analogy for a reason.
yeah, that's awesome. Well, wow, we've got a lot here.
We
So
do.
let's make
I'm
We didn't even talk
reviewing my
about
notes.
I was waiting for the magic tricks and we didn't even get to those.
We did, gosh, we have so much to talk about. The pass, the one-handed top palm, color changes, and we have a lot of. I will say, this is interesting, and obviously you don't do this. I have performed at restaurants where some Christians have said, we can't see your magic. You can make like a balloon for the kids. They were very nice. They were
Yeah.
very nice about it. They were not like mean or weird about it, but they're like, can you not do the magic? And I would just ask, of course I won't. Can I just out of curiosity ask why? And they thought it had to do with like evil. I'm like, it's sleight of hand. It's not. I don't try to convince them, but I thought it was interesting.
Yeah.
You don't share that perspective though, obviously, because you do card tricks. Now next you're gonna spin your head and spit fire? Is that what you're gonna
It,
do
it's
next?
like it's like many things in life. A brick can build a house or it can break a window. It's what are we using it for? And there are some guys
I
that
like
do
that.
dark tricks with their magic and their scenes, but we're not watching those. The same way there's dark movies. Those aren't the things I want to put before my eyes.
Yeah.
So, but the sleight of
Good point.
hand, it's just we know it's a trick. It's amazement. It's wonder. It's how do you do that? I got to catch him next time. Oh, there's not a next time.
Yes.
You got me.
Uh,
And so
yeah.
there's
That's
that
it.
that
Yes.
competitive level of how did he do that?
Yes. Yeah.
But then you still feel
Good.
that awe, and you get to a point where I don't want to learn some tricks because I'm amazed right now, and I want to sit there with that.
So I'm just gonna throw this out to you. Whenever you want, just contact me. We'll do a video, like
Yeah.
a FaceTime if you want to work on any technique.
Dude.
Since you gave me, we're not gonna talk about it in the pre-interview. He gave me a move that's gonna help me against Vlad and Big Juan. So we're not going to share that. These guys are going to feel that. So, to give back, if you want to work on any particular technique, I'll be happy to video.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll do a FaceTime, and I'll help you with some technique if you'd like.
I need some of those and some O's Pearlman tricks. If I can get some of those, man, he's got
I got you
those
covered.
pendulum down too.
Yeah.
I got you covered. So,
Awesome.
Jason, what do you think it's time?
Yeah, Frank. What time is it, Frank?
Why, it's tap out time. We're on your way out of this amazing conversation, deep, philosophical, spiritual. I'm going to wrap up a couple of really cool quotes and ideas that Ben shared with us that we're very grateful for, so that you end and you can just summarize everything. Although there's too much to summarize in this hour-long podcast, I'm going to some of the things that really struck me that I loved that Ben talked about. So, Ben, I liked that you said, don't even sinners like people who are nice to them. I just think that's a beautiful, just a beautiful statement. Okay. All right. So if you'd like me to cite Jesus, I'll cite Jesus on that. That's just a great philosophy to carry in your pocket to make the world a better place. It's very true too. Most people, if you're nice to them, most people appreciate it. Most. It's a good winning bet. I love that philosophy. I really like the way when you talk about ideas, you use this phrase, there's more than one way to get to a guillotine. I like that because it is true in jiu-jitsu. And it's also true in talking about religion or talking about accounting or talking about anything. It's just a universal nugget of wisdom. I love it. I love it. This is not really a point to share, but it's something neat. I never heard the word worldview used like you did it, so you added to my vocabulary. Thank you for that. I love that you talked about spiritual jujitsu and really trying to when you something I like about you, when you want to make a point, you take your time to get there, you get your position before your submission. So you really thought about it methodologically, how to get your point across of what you were trying to say. I thought you were very articulate in that way. It was great to be on the other side of that. You talked about humility. You talked about don't be the blue belt who thinks they're a black belt. I like that. I think that's great. We all do think we have it figured out in our own mind, but we're all of us, in the grand scheme of things, we're all blue belts or white belts. We really are. There's so much to learn about our world. That humility that we learn on the mat makes us better at studying spirituality or religion, makes us better at studying entrepreneurship, anything. That's a great philosophy to have. You gave us a lot of quotes that really apply not only to religion, but to life. I like the way you talked about with your study of religion, head knowledge, and then that's obviously important, but having the heart knowledge behind it, the heart behind the head knowledge. And you talked about it's the same thing with jujitsu, with grappling. You can't just watch YouTube. You got to live it. You got to do it. You got to believe it. You got to be there. You got to sweat. Beautiful. Beautiful. Next, I appreciate you because I know you're a man of conviction and I know that you thoroughly believe in your way, but you at the same time you say it's about sharing, not about judging. I think that's so important for people to have high level conviction. I like the way you said that. Listen, I have something great. I just want to share it with people. I'm not out here to judge you. I'm just here to share what I have. And it's like a good move in jujitsu. Hey, I found a way to get out of the rear naked choke. Do you want to see it? Do you want to see it? Because I have a way and it's a cool way. Check it out. I think that's a great philosophy to have. And I think it's not a tribalistic philosophy. It's more of a sharing philosophy. And that is exactly what we build. So many connections to spirituality and jujitsu. I like that you said, and I tell this to my students all the time, do all things to the best of your ability. Your religion teaches you that, and jujitsu teaches you that. Both of those teach you that. You made a great point. This is so important for men, women to hear out there. There is a big difference between being harmless and being peaceful. There's a big difference. Being peaceful, I think, is a better goal than to be harmless. Because if you're peaceful, you can protect yourself, you can protect your family, you can protect your values, and at the same time be kind and share them and be able to protect yourself. Harmless, you're just, I don't want to say it like this, everybody's bitch, and you don't want to be that. You don't want to be harmless. You also mentioned something a little out of religion, but I thought it was very important because you were getting into law enforcement, how important it is not to go from 2 to 10 when you only need a 4. That was really nicely laid out. Don't go from 2 to 10 when all you need is a 4. And Jason in his gym, I know, does this all the time. He does a lot with law enforcement. It's always about the escalating. It's always about the kindest path to securing somebody, and he always talks, Jason always talks as an instructor. The person you're taking down is a human being too. Let's take them down as gently as we can while protecting ourselves and the people around us. That's just great for everybody here. Law enforcement out there, if you're in law enforcement, please consider jujitsu. It will help you so much. I know I'm going on too long, but there's just so much you gave me. I loved your C.S. Lewis. Good philosophy must exist because bad philosophy does. That's awesome. And it applies to jujitsu. Fighting, your ability to fight must exist because bad people's ability to fight exists. You talked about BJJ. You said something that probably 50% of our guests have said. BJJ is physical chess. And if you want to learn physical chess to get your body and mind in better shape, that it's the best way to do it. You talked about, and I love this. This might have been my favorite thing as a teacher. You talked about Paul, and you said these words, and they're ah dead on. Meet people where they are. You cannot help people if you don't want to meet them where they are. That is so powerful for anybody who is teaching anybody anything, and especially educators out there. Every student's in a different place. Meet them where they're at, and you will have great success. And the last thing, I always have a phrase that I like to use, like when people say, "Is the internet good? Is AI good?" I always say, "It's a steak knife. You can cut your steak or you can stab somebody." And I like yours to give me some variety. I'm going to use this. It's a brick that can build a house or break a window. That's a damn good one. So I want to just say thank you so much for sharing all of that and more in 1 hour, concise, clear. I could see why you're a speaker at events. You're just an open, honest guy. And man, we appreciate you. We definitely appreciate you. So thank
Well,
you.
I'm very thankful you guys had me on. You guys have been very gracious, very kind in the discussions, very respectful. It's been um, very enjoyable. You guys have been great hosts and super gracious. Very much
Same
appreciate
to you.
you asking me to come.
Likewise. Likewise. We
Thanks,
we
Ben.
respect
We
you a lot.
appreciate you. And to our listeners, Ben, one thing we forgot to mention that about is Ben is an author of a book called
Yes.
Trustworthy. It's called Trustworthy: 13 Arguments for Reliability of the New Testament. So if anybody is interested, we will put that in our description. If you have a link for that or something, Ben, or if you have a link for anything, Ben, just please let it give that to us so we can put that in the description of this episode. So if anybody's interested, they can click on that and get your valuable insight
Yeah.
on this.
Yeah, that'd be great. The book's
Well,
only 140 pages. I didn't want to write one of those big giant ones. You got to keep it short, otherwise people won't read it, right?
you're a man who's concise. You're clear, clean, concise, cogent. I mean, I'm sure your book is great. We're gonna put it on our. I have one last question. As a religious man, when you get somebody in a rear naked choke and your face is right near their ear, do you ever want to just say, "It's time for you to meet Jesus"?
Do you want a near-death
I do
experience or
do
not?
like the crucifix position.
That's great. I'm just mad at
That's your
myself for
favorite.
not thinking about that.
It's a good one. I mean, when you're 160 and the guys are 200 pounds, you can control one arm with both of your legs, and then you're just free to attack the neck.
Yeah, we're gonna have to. If you're ever in the Massachusetts area, you gotta come to our gym. Listen, you
Yeah,
come to our gym, I will teach you whatever magic you want to
there it
learn with the
is.
card stuff,
Right.
and you teach me how to deal with big people.
Well, hey, so I had a guy yesterday who we're trying to work on something. He's in Massachusetts. So as we get that worked out, you guys know.
Well, you now
Yes,
have
please.
family in Massachusetts. All
All
right.
right.
Yeah.
Thank you. We appreciate you. Take care.
Likewise.
And good luck with everything. Good luck with your nonprofit. Put your link to your nonprofit on there. So I'm sure there's some listeners who are on your wavelength and would love to probably help you out.
Yeah, I'll send you guys that. I've got to run because we have a meeting at 6:30, so I'm 15 minutes late for it. But I wanted to say
Man.
because we were doing good, and I enjoyed the questions. I thought the way we started was great, so I do appreciate that. And look forward. I hope we can do it again.
We'll definitely have you back on the show. And don't forget, FaceTime me when you want to do some magic, okay?
Yeah. Yes.
All
I'll
right.
send you that
All
stuff when I get back tonight.
All right. Sounds great.
All
Have a
right,
great
thanks.
meeting. Have a
All
great
right.
weekend.
See you guys.
Be
See
good,
you guys.
everybody.
Bye.
Peace out.